Hello and welcome back to the MMA Bar. Today we're going to discuss the story of arguably the most chaotic event in UFC history. I'm talking of the recently concluded UFC PPV event that was supposed to be headlined by Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev, but later reshuffled for Nate Diaz to take on fellow veteran Tony Ferguson. The days leading up to UFC 279 were some of the most chaotic in UFC history. It all started on Wednesday when Costa and Chimaev got into an altercation at the UFC PI in Las Vegas. Costa posted a video of the incident on his YouTube channel. In the video, Costa was finishing a training session with Jake Shields when Chimaev confronted him and the two exchanged heated words before Chimaev's team drags him away. This gave fans a lot of talking points, and today many are thirsty for this matchup. While Costa looks to be eager to face Khamzat anytime, Khamzat is more reluctant in taking the fight. Well, that was only the start of the drama that occurred ahead of UFC 279. Khamzat was involved in another scuffle, and on Thursday, the UFC 279 pre-fight press conference was cancelled following backstage altercations between multiple parties. UFC President Dana White took the stage at the MGM Grand Garden Arena and relayed the unfortunate news that due to events unfolding behind the curtain, the press conference would not proceed due to the interest of safety for everyone involved. According to White, all hell broke loose. Among the parties involved in the backstage events were UFC fighters Khamzat Chimaev and Kevin Holland, who at the time were not scheduled to fight each other at the pay-per-view event. Headliner Nate Diaz was also involved and can be seen throwing an object at someone. Renowned MMA reporter Ariel Helwani gave his account of what happened backstage.
Serious kicks, punches landed, but there was definitely, some physicality, if you will. Now, Tiki Gosen, who is...
While there were lots of uncertainties on what exactly happened, more than 24 hours later, ESPN released footage of the scuffle between the fighters. Despite officials' best efforts to keep Chimaev and Holland separate, Chimaev appears to kick Holland, pushing him back before they are separated. Holland later appeared at the press conference and sidestepped questions from the media about what happened. It wasn't the first time Chimaev and Holland had crossed paths. The two got into a verbal altercation at UFC Vegas 21 and had traded shots on social media and in interviews before they allegedly got physical at the UFC 279 presser. While it looked like that was all the drama we were getting ahead of the event, another one unfolded, but this time changing the scene of the event completely. One day before he was supposed to headline UFC 279 in a bout with Nate Diaz that may have been the final step to a title fight, Khamzat Chimaev badly missed weight. Chimaev stepped on the scales on Friday morning in Las Vegas and weighed in at 178.5 pounds, missing weight by 7.5 pounds when considering the 1 pound allowance for non-title fights. The weight miss was another step in a chaotic week for Chimaev, who was one of the central figures in the wild backstage altercation that forced a last-minute cancellation of the pre-fight press conference on Thursday evening. Chimaev appeared not to show any remorse about the weight miss and the implications it had on the events. He even joked about it by posting this tweet. This led to several fighters and fans calling him unprofessional. Well, Khamzat had his reasons. According to him, he was advised by a doctor to stop cutting weight as he was cramping. Dana White had the same opinion. He said, "If you saw him yesterday, he was very lean already and he should have come in on weight. He started to cut weight and he started locking up and cramping and all the things that are from a bad cut. Unlike 10 years ago, we send in a doctor and they determine whether he will keep cutting weight, and the doctor told him he shouldn't." Chimaev's coach Andreas Michael also discussed the situation and addressed mistakes that were made in training camp. He was getting muscle spasms, shaking, vomiting. When he stood up, he was passing out. I was worried about him. His whole career, he's been fighting at welterweight. He's missed weight this time, but it's not as if he's been missing weight all the time. The point of the thing is that we're going to make it easier and fight at middleweight some of the fights, but we're game for welterweight as well. This threw a spanner in the works of the UFC. What was supposed to be a demolition of Nate Diaz turned out in his favor. Many regarded the situation as poetic justice. Nate had all the cards and could decide whether or not to proceed with the main event. One thing led to another, and it was announced that the main event between Khamzat Chimaev and Nate Diaz was called off. White told reporters after the event that the Nevada State Athletic Commission would never have sanctioned a fight between Chimaev and Diaz because of the weight discrepancy. Just 24 hours before the event was scheduled to take place, Dana White announced a historic reshuffling of the fight card for UFC 279. There were now 3 new bouts, with Nate Diaz facing Tony Ferguson and Chimaev taking on Kevin Holland in the co-main event, while Li Jingliang also had a new opponent in Daniel Rodriguez. Rodriguez had been originally set to face Holland before the last-minute game of musical martial arts took place. The new card was not lacking in storylines, as Holland and Chimaev reportedly got into a physical altercation on Thursday that led to the UFC 279 pre-fight press conference being abruptly cancelled. Many fans and fighters loved the new fights and felt the shuffle made the event much better. Li Jingliang and Daniel Rodriguez were the first to square off in the 3 fights that were shuffled. The fight was a tightly contested battle, with Rodriguez taking a split decision to the surprise of many fans. D-Rod set a fast pace early. He was in Jingliang's face from the get-go and got off an early lead. However, Jingliang came back into the fight with some leg kicks of his own. All 3 rounds were hard to score as both fighters had their moments, and the total striking numbers were comparatively close. In the co-main event, Khamzat Chimaev earned a decisive victory with a lightning-quick submission to finish Kevin Holland in the first round. The fight had barely started when Chimaev secured a takedown and immediately began looking for openings to wrap up a finish. While Holland did an admirable job to stay out of trouble in the first few exchanges on the ground, Chimaev was relentless with his attacks. Eventually, Chimaev lashed onto a Darce choke submission, and after tightening his grip, Holland had no choice but to tap out to end the fight. The stoppage came at just 2 minutes and 13 seconds in the opening round. In the post-fight interview, Chimaev said, "What now? Say something? I'm the most dangerous guy here. I'm coming for everyone. I kill everyone. I'm going to go through everybody. Nobody can stop me. If I die, I'll die in the cage. I never leave the cage. It's my home." Finally, it was time for the main event. Ferguson came out from the opening moments with a leg kick heavy attack. One of the first kicks he threw in the fight led his shin to collide with Diaz's, immediately opening a cut on Ferguson's shin that would continue to bleed for the rest of the fight. Those kicks continued to land throughout the fight, leading Diaz's lead leg to bruise and swell. Despite taking heavy damage, Diaz continued trying to stalk Ferguson and throw combinations and hard left hands when he was able to close distance or get Ferguson's back to the cage. Even as Diaz had success, Ferguson continued landing hard leg kicks. Eventually, Diaz seemed frustrated by the incoming damage and he began to walk around the outside of the cage, shaking his head. Diaz would do so, letting his hands go more and tagging Ferguson with combinations. In the 4th round, Ferguson looked for a takedown, a move his corner had been asking for over the previous 2 rounds. That decision turned out to be Ferguson's undoing, as Diaz quickly locked in a guillotine choke and squeezed until Ferguson was forced to tap out at the 2-minute 52-second mark of the round. In his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, Nate Diaz said he'd like to go conquer another sport, but will be back to the UFC for a run at the title. "It's been a love-hate relationship, but at the end of the day, I love the UFC." The intensity of the fight week drew the attention of many fighters, and here was some of their reactions to the result. Chris Curtis tweeted, "Holy hell, Khamzat just steamrolled him." Ben Askren tweeted, "Damn, Holland lasted a long time in that choke. I also think he hurt his shoulder on the roll in the last TD sequence." Megan Anderson tweeted, "Chimaev does not deserve a title fight if they try to push that narrative." Henry Cejudo tweeted, "A lot of unnecessary drama this week, but Khamzat Chimaev is bad, man. Such a special talent." Francis Ngannou tweeted, "Nate Diaz is a free man." Congrats, Nathan. Jake Paul tweeted, "Breaking news, Nate Diaz is officially out of his UFC contract." Dustin Poirier tweeted, "The Bum Olympics." Sergio Pettis tweeted, "Nate Diaz is the man. I'm smoking mad weed tonight." Derek Brunson tweeted, "Nate had the best week of events. UFC contract ends as he wanted. Stock rises. On to the next venture." Guys, thank you for watching this video. That's all for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell.